Stellar Fundraising Auctions presents Black Tie and Tails. Brought to you by our partner Sojourn Ventures, featuring your co-hosts Greg Quiroga and Devon Bell. Welcome to Black Tie and Tails, where we share tales of triumph and tragedy from behind the scenes in the wonderful world of fundraising auctions. I'm Greg Quiroga, half of your co-hosting team, joined as always by my inimitable co-host Devon Bell.
Hello, all.
And Devo, do you like to gamble?
I like to win.
Right, like that, exactly.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's like the world's poorest kept secret that I dealt blackjack in Tahoe for years. And one of the things I learned in dealing blackjack in Tahoe is like, it's really fun when you win, but you never should put anything on the table that you're not willing to lose.
Yeah, it's fun when you win, and when you lose, less so.
Yeah, and the same is really true in fundraising auctions. When you take a gamble, it is so fun if it works, right? Fun and profitable, right? You know, and you get put out. Today's episode is out on a limb, right? When you go out on a limb, it's great if it works. Right, you're a hero. The whole crowd goes wild. Everything's great. Or the person who joins you on the limb, like they're a hero. And when it goes wrong and the limb cracks,
yeah,
oh, you better hope it's not a far fall from there.
Out on a limb with a handsaw.
that not quite a band name. Not quite. Like it's bordering on a good band name, but it's a little too. So, I had an event where I was actually not out on a limb. It was like I was doing this large organization, big crowd, 800 people, doing the Fund a Need, open the Fund a Need at $10,000. We're doing fine. We're getting lots of people at $10,000. And somebody comes up running up to me and says, "You didn't start high enough." I'm like, well, okay. Where should I have started?
And to be fair, when the opening level gets a whole bunch of paddles, we say that to ourselves.
Right? Yeah.
We
sure.
say that to ourselves.
Yeah. You open at 10,000, you see 5 paddles, you're like,
right? We should have pushed a little.
Totally. And so I asked this person, like, well, where should I have started? And he says, 100. And I was like, so you realize we start at the top and come down, right? And he's like, yeah, no, 100. And I was like, okay. And he goes back to his table. So I'm like, is there somebody? I stopped the crowd. I said, I apologize, everybody, but I've just been told that I didn't start the Fund a Need high enough.
And you must be thinking somebody who asked it to be at 100 is going to raise their paddle at 100.
So I look at the guy, I'm like, is there somebody that you know who's going to raise their paddle at $100,000? And lo and behold, this woman at his table who owns the venue that we're doing the event in, she raises her paddle for $100,000.
That is a big success.
Big success. Oh, my crowd goes wild. Everybody go crazy. And then, you know, from there, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask. Does anybody else want to do $100,000?
You got to laugh.
Got to laugh.
Yeah, you got to laugh.
Didn't get any donations. Okay, on we go. So come back the next year, and that donor's not going to be in the room, but there's somebody who we think is willing to do 100,000 who's going to be there.
We think.
And I said, okay, I am perfectly happy doing that, justifying the ask by with the story that I'll go into momentarily. But if we're going to do that, we have to have the next 2 levels. We have to have somebody at 50,000. We have to have somebody at 25,000. Because if we're going to start, and the numbers, don't get hung up on the numbers on this. I mean, the numbers make it impressive, but the same thing is true with 10,000, 5,000, 2,500. You're going to send me out on a
1,500, 250.
Right. You're going to send me out on a limb. You better darn well have the next 2 levels covered. Because if you don't, well, we'll get to that story later. So I say, okay, you know, I feel justified as long as we have somebody at those next 2 levels. And so they do their groundwork, and lo and behold, they come back, you know what? Yes. So already this has been a huge success in terms of upping the expectations of their crowd, right? Anybody who was there last year knows we did 100,000, and suddenly the ask for 50 doesn't seem insane or greedy, because when somebody sets the bar, it raises the expectations of all those who come after that, right? Like, how long did it take for somebody to run a 4-minute mile?
Right.
Right. And then as soon as they did, boom, the 4-minute miles start pouring in. Once you set the expectation that this is a $100,000 single donation event, then suddenly 50,000. Okay, sure, fine.
Yeah.
So,
and I'll say as well about expectation is even the very wealthy, the donor class, they didn't get there by just throwing around 100 on a whim. They often know they're going to give 100 grand, and they have a rotation, the events they go to, where they're going to give. And so if you had a successful 100 grand last year, or paddles at 50 and 25, then it sets the expectation for your whales, for your donor class, for your crucial central people to put that in their lineup.
Yes. And so we get to, I said, let me go out on a limb at 100. Let me see, right? I think there's a narrative here that I can work with. And so we do the auctions, short auction, well, whatever, short then. Now people are like 10 auction lots. Oh my gosh. But we do our short auction and get the crowd quieted down, focused, ready to do the fund the need, and make, do the pitch, watch the video, come back. And I say, okay, last year I was told that I did not start the fund the need high enough. And I would like to think that I am a growing person who learns my lessons. And so this year, we've got a generous donor who's going to kick us off at $50,000, and that's amazing. But first, and I think one of the keys of going out on a limb is making sure, A, that you have that next level donor, and B, that they're not going to be offended or upset if you go over their head.
If they get upstaged, yeah.
Right? And I've got a whole separate story about that. But we've got a generous donor who's going to kick us off at 50,000. But last year I was told we didn't start high enough, and we started at $100,000. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask, is there anybody who wants to donate $100,000? And I let it sit. And I'm looking around the room, and one of the secrets to my performance is the bigger I smile, the deeper the shit I'm in, right?
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. You look around and nobody wants any part of any of this.
Everybody's looking away from me, not looking, and the broader my grin gets, that just means like, oh, the deeper trouble I'm in, right? Like, oh boy, this is, and I say, like, look, I know it's a big ask, right?
The ask is great because the need is great.
Exactly. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I have to borrow that one from you. My line is you only get what you ask for. And so we're making this ask. Does anybody? And I can see the development person. She's running across the dance floor. I'm on a riser in the middle of the dance floor, by the way. Call back.
Last episode. That's right.
Call back. I can see out of the corner of my eye, she's coming across the room and she's like doing the God, please move on. This is horrible, like blah, blah, blah. And suddenly this guy says, yes, and raises his paddle.
To 100.
$100,000. 1, 2, 3, $100,000. Crowd goes crazy. Does anybody else? 4, 5, 6, $100,000. 7, 8, 9, 100,000. Right? I get goosebumps just thinking about it back then.
We're done, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.
And like, crowd goes crazy, like amazing. And then we drop down to 50 and we go to 25. We do the whole thing is like a wonderful, huge success. And the interesting thing was that third 100 was new money. New donor
had never given at all,
never participated in their event before, had never, and that's one of those success stories that you can like mythologize and build an entire structure around and have it never happen again. But wow, right? I mean, going out on a limb not only yielded 100,000, it yielded 300,000 in a new donor in a high-level donor class that we wouldn't have had access to before.
Honestly, if the year before you had gotten the 100 and you were going out at 10, it probably doubled your fund to need.
Right.
It probably doubled your fund to need from year over year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, and expectations for this particular event have scaled over the years. I mean, there have been years where we've had a $500,000 lead and then somebody came over the top and did $1 million, right?
Would anyone like to join them at 1 million? I'll give it a second.
Yeah. And, and everybody laughs and, and that's the place and time where you acknowledge that there's a moment and
I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't put it out there. Anyone want to give over $1 million?
Does anybody want to donate $1 million to my son's college fund? Black Tie and Tails is brought to you by our partner Sojourn Ventures. When your auction needs international travel, check out Sojourn Ventures. They curate trips to Bali, Spain, and Italy, and now they just added Puglia, Salento, Italy to their list of Italian packages. So you can go to Puglia, you can go to Cortona, or you can go to Venice. I mean, I thought like Venice was the end all when they added that last year. Stacy and her team are on the ground in Italy, finding new great places for you to stay and building amazing experiences around them. They offer over a dozen curated packages that include round-trip airport transfers, full body massages, daily breakfasts, in-home chef's dinners, and more. Your buyers get 2 full years to redeem their trip, top-level concierge service, all at reasonable to you consignment prices. Check out sojournventurestravel.com or just look for the link in the bio of this podcast. So you kind of foreshadowed this next story when we talk about like when you go out, if you're going to go out on a limb, you don't want to fall far.
All right. Well, I don't appreciate it that you got to tell I went out on a limb and brought in an extra $300K, but now that's the triumph. Now I'll tell the tragedy part of the story. This was years ago because it was early on in my career. So this was many years ago, and it was an arts organization, and it wasn't my first time doing them. And the year before it had gone just fine. And so they said, what was their opening number? I think their opening number was 20K.
Okay.
And then
that's a big swing.
Right. It was 20K and then 10K and then 5K. And so it was early enough in my career where I knew to say, okay, do we have a bid there?
Right.
Right. No, maybe it was 50. It went 50 and then 25 and then 10 and then 5 and 2,500 and so on. And so I said, do you have anyone at 50? And they said no, but there are people with that capacity in the room, so we want to make it.
I hate that phrase.
Right? There's people who might, they have the money, and I didn't know to say, which I say now as a crucial part of the process, which is I'm okay with going out on a limb one level.
Right.
And then if we don't get that, we laugh it off and I say how overly ambitious I was. We absolutely have to have a paddle at the next level down because crickets twice in a row is a buzzkill that everybody can feel.
Yeah.
Everybody can feel that. And right, it just destroys your like emotional momentum. So,
and it also denigrates the donors who do come in at whatever level that is. By the time you get to
totally them. Right. Like you get nothing. So anyway, here's how this went. Yeah, because you just perfect. I said, and they said, oh well, we don't have anybody, but we know we'll get someone at that. So went out at 50. The ask is great because the need is great. Nothing, crickets. Okay, I said I'd be ambitious. Let's bring it down to earth. Who can pledge $25,000 tonight? Crickets again. That, like I said, 2 levels already bad, actively horrible. And so we go down to $10,000. Nada.
Oh no.
3rd level in a row. Years later, Greg, I saw you running a fund of need that was going poorly. And, maybe you had the one that you needed. But then after that, there's just nothing. And
right.
I remember thankfully, I haven't had to use this, but it's in my pocket, which is you kind of acknowledged that it was going poorly. And you said like something effective like, that's okay. We're going to find our way together and we're going to find a level that works. Like just acknowledging that like, hey, if the plan is to ask for the money and people haven't raised their paddles, this is failing.
Right.
This is a big failure. So we go 50, nothing, 25, nothing, 10, nothing. the vibe is horrible. We get to 5 and the paddles go up, and you know what a 5,000 paddle at that point is like, wah, 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 right?
It's a tenth of what you started at.
No, they're not like lifting up their paddle with like,
look at me, lead the charge.
Their joy, of their joy. They're looking like, oh yeah, I'm with the also rans, you know? Like this is
never how you want to make a donor feel, but especially what is ostensibly the lead donor in your fund a need.
Yeah, and we both pride ourselves on not leaning on people hard and rather trade on the gratitude and the joy of the moment so that they spent a little more than they meant to, but they came to it of their own accord.
Right.
We didn't beat it and shame it out of them, right? So yeah, that was the last time I ever didn't insist on having a paddle. Oh, and another thing I'll say about going on a limb is...
And by having a paddle, you mean having a lead donor.
Having a lead donor. You got to have a paddle go up. You cannot have multiple levels with nothing.
Yeah.
That is no good. And another thing that I have taken to, and I recommend is... Okay, we know we have a paddle at 10. Do we want to take a chance and go because someone in the room might give 20? And what I'll say is, how about... I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't at least put it out there. Anyone moved by the Spirit who wants to give any amount in excess of 10.
Sure.
Right? It's now we're not leaving money in the room. If you were down for 20, welcome in. And if you, maybe you were the person who was going to get, I've had this. It was the person who was going to give 10 and they gave 12. Right? They're just like, I just want to be a little more philanthropic. So
that's an extra 2.
It's an
20% more.
You weren't expecting it. Anything you get is a bonus. So, but yeah, you said it is. It's okay going on a limb, and good things can happen. But have an exit strategy from all that.
Yeah. I have a similar story to that, and I'll try to keep it concise because it's not the story I want to end on. But I was doing an event in the Napa Valley, and it's an organization that was lucky enough to have Gordon Getty in attendance. And Gordon Getty, ultra wealthy philanthropist, very giving, does a lot of great work, has done for a long time. And the person putting this event on had this sense of entitlement to the level of donations that should be coming in because Gordon was there, and this expectation that Gordon would step up. And so we get to the fund a need, and I'm like, okay. And I'm like, where do we start? They said $50,000. I said, great. Who's going to do it? They said, oh, Gordon has that, right? Like Gordon's capable of that. And I'm like, sure, capable is not the same as committed, right? Like one of my lines I tell crowds is like, look, we're going to work our way down in the fund the need till we hit that place where capacity and commitment align, right?
Bacon and egg breakfast. The chicken has capacity. Right. The pig is committed. Yeah.
And so we make the pitch. I go out and I say, who's going to contribute $50,000? And Gordon's like, ooh, exciting. Who's going to contribute 50? He wants to see who's going to make the donation. And you're sunk.
Oh yeah,
you're sunk. You can't be out on a limb, especially can't be out on a limb if you have somebody who has capacity in your crowd. Because you said something about they have capacity. I hate that phrase because that means we haven't asked them to spend. We haven't asked them to give. We haven't cultivated that donor. What we have cultivated is a butt in a seat.
Yeah, right. There's That's it. The fact that they have money has nothing to do with an expectation of giving. No, maybe they don't have a paddle. Maybe their friend gave them a ticket to this. Yeah, right. How much money they have is not. We can't rely on that at all.
Maybe they underwrote the foundation of the organization and already feel like they've contributed enough, and they just want to be there to celebrate it, and are interested in seeing who celebrates the organization that they helped underwrite.
Right. I get. Remember when you asked me for $100,000 in the capital campaign, right? And I gave it.
Yes,
I'm here for the party.
Yeah. I mean, you have no idea. Don't make gambling part of your donor development strategy, and saying they have capacity is gambling. Asking them in advance is so important. So the other story I have of being out on a limb is I was doing a wine auction in Silicon Valley, and great place to be doing an auction.
Money.
Great place to be selling wine and vintner-based experiences. And there are 3 things. You have 3 options when you're putting together the description of your auction lots in the catalog. You can print the value of the item being sold.
Right.
You can print nothing.
Or you can do the opening bid.
Right. And this particular event I was doing had chosen you have chosen the way of nothing. There was you every single auction lot, you read up on it, blah blah blah. It's a case of sine qua non, no value.
Very zen. Very zen.
Yeah, very very zen.
Zen lot, no lot.
And what was interesting was everything had values on it when we did the lot order. Right? Like I've said it before on the podcast. Whenever I'm making a recommendation on lot order, I also make a recommendation on opening bid so that me and the committee and the team are in lockstep on expectation of where we start this.
And it's a complex formula, but the most generic kind of boilerplate is half the value.
Right.
Yeah.
If something comes in, if for example, a board member for a wine auction in Silicon Valley is hosting dinner for 10 at their house with a local caterer coming in to do the food, and they're going to pair their wines with it. If they say that value is $7,000.
How many people?
10 people. Right? I mean,
better be some good wine.
Better be a popular board member.
Right. True that.
If an auction lot has an actual retail value to it,
and this one that you just described has that element of priceless,
right? It's that $7,000. I think was aspirational, right? Like that's what I want dinner with me to be worth, right? If you say, for example, you've got a condo in Tahoe for 8 people for 3 nights and 4 days.
You can kind of look that up.
Right. And you can say like, oh yeah, that's a $2,500 auction lot or a $5,000 auction lot, whatever, depending on the house or the condo or whatever it is. Like so when you say, hey, it's a $4,000 getaway, we're going to start the bidding at $2,000, people don't think you're crazy. Right. Again, no expectations on this. We're going through the auction, we're doing the auction and things are doing fine. Right. Wine is selling, stuff is going. It's pretty well established that I'm starting things at half of value. That's pretty expected. And so I get to this particular board member's auction lot. I make the pitch and I hadn't even thought about it up until this point in this auction, right? Like this blindsided me. I hadn't considered the fact that opening bid was a limb and it was a thin one.
Like $700 a head for dinner,
right?
As the opening bid.
No, the opening bid was $3,500.
Oh, okay, but still, $350 per person is a ton.
It's like that's and so I say, blah, blah, we're gonna have dinner at this person's house. It's gonna be this wine, yada yada, blah blah blah. We're gonna open the bidding at $3,500, and the crowd looks at me like this. What?
Ruh-roh, Raggy.
Crazy? Are you insane? And I was like, looking at him, I was like, oh my gosh, that's a limb. We're all like, oh, you don't think it. And I was like, and that's when you and I have talked about like the sheer panic that comes with not getting an opening bid, especially if it's a board member who's put in the conversation beforehand should have been, what do we really think this is worth and where should we really start the bidding?
And if we catch crickets at the opening bid, what's the plan here? What's the plan here?
And at that point, in the middle of the auction, I don't want the board member sitting right there. I don't want to denigrate them and be like, oh, wait, never mind. Let's start the bidding at $2,000 and go, right? Because
although ironically, a lot of times you'll start at 2 and then it'll sell for $3,500 anyway. People are weird.
Get a bid. Mm-hmm. Get another bid
at 35.
Like get 3,500, and then get like 3,700, and then it dies on the vine.
Well, you're stoked though.
Oh, I'm excited.
Like I'm not a math major, but 1 is infinitely more than 0.
Oh yes, yes. And 2, well, that's double that, right? And so we wind up selling it for like $3,700, and whatever, on we go. The other auction lot that I always remember from this particular auction was Michael Chiarello, the chef in Napa, had just opened Bottega, which is pretty much putting a point on the timeline as to when this auction took place. He just opened Bottega, and he donated dinner for 6 at Bottega, skip the line because it was impossible to get into Bottega when it was brand new. It was skip the line, chef's tasting menu. Michael Chiarello, will prepare it for you and hang out at your table.
Now it's priceless.
What's the value? Michael said, $600, right?
What?
That's the value of the food, right? That's how much,
right.
That's how much, and it was a pretty generous donation. I mean, I'm sure that if you 6 people went into Bottega today, you'd be hard pressed to get out of there for $600, but $600. And so I said, when I pitched that auction lot, I said, we're going to start the bidding on this Michael's way too generous. We'll start the bidding at $100 per person and go. And I started it at $600. So I'm like,
even that seems low.
That seems low.
Yeah.
But we started it at $600. Between that and the board members auction lot, which do you think sold for more?
Right. At 600, it was a sea of paddles. You just pointed your finger out and started saying
just said 6, 7, 8, 9,
yeah, exactly. 12,
13, 15, 16, 22, 22, 23, 32, 34, 40, 45, 55, 55, go,
going up by 500s.
We were at 6,000 in no time on that. And so that says a couple of things, but one of the things it says to me is that managing a crowd's expectations is really important. And so when it comes to those three things, value, nothing, or opening bid, I'm a proponent for opening bid. I know that there's other fundraising auctioneers out there, and bless you, leave it in the comments and come at me on YouTube. I'm good for that. But I know there's other fundraising auctioneers out there who hate having opening bid. I love opening bid. I love having opening bid in the catalog because I think it does a couple of key things in terms of expectation management. A, if there's a hard retail price on something, it shows the crowd, we're starting the bidding on hard retail prices at 50%.
Yep.
Right? Here's a bottle of wine. I look it up on Wine Searcher. This bottle of wine is worth $750. We're opening the bidding at $350. That makes sense. Right? And I know that's not exactly 50%, but I'd rather do that than $375. And sometimes you open it for whatever. That's a tangent. But then
don't stop him now. He's cooking.
Yeah. But also, if there's something that's priceless, there's only so many times in your catalog you can write a synonym for priceless before it loses all of its power.
Right. Unique, one of a kind.
Yeah, exactly. Blah, 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 blah. And at that point, you're just telling the crowd, I don't know. You figure it out, right?
Yeah. How much do you think it's worth?
Right. And that's bull, right? That's just total. But instead, so for that board members dinner, right? What do we think a good opening price per person would be that we could communicate? Is 10 people is 150 per person? Is that about to go have a catered dinner with wine paired in somebody's private home, especially somebody that has great views? Is 150 per person a fair place to start? Is it 100 per person? So we're going to start the bidding at 1,500. Then people can do their own math. Oh, 1,500, that's 150 per person. That makes them set their own expectations on what they think the value is, what they think they should be spending on it.
And something else I really like about doing the opening bid is when it comes to what is the nature of the lot, you don't want contemplative things where you have a relationship with it and you might not just want it at all at any price. What you want is, what the heck things.
Yes.
A piece of art, a piece of jewelry. That's either you like it or you don't. You might not want it for any price. But a fancy dinner or staying in somebody's condo in Hawaii, I kind of heard enough. Here's my paddle.
Right.
What the heck? I'm in. Right. But outside of what the lot is, the idea of having time to sit with it and be contemplative. And if you found out a couple days ago or earlier tonight even what the opening bid's going to be, then you get to picture yourself raising your paddle at that amount.
That's a great call.
And if we're going to start the bidding at 500, then if you're interested in this thing, it's going to start at 500, and you can talk yourself into raising your paddle.
Yeah.
So I like not having that first number be something we just spring on in the moment.
Right. Yeah. All about do your rational thinking in advance and come to me in a moment of intuition.
Right. Do your rational thinking in advance and then check that shit at the door because we're going feels only from now on.
Yes, exactly. And there are times when you need to underscore just how priceless something is. And I understand that. Meals on Wheels San Francisco, for example, all of their incredible, unique auction packages are chef going to come to your house and do something, right? Insane, Michelin starred chefs coming to your place to do things. And so what they actually put is value of the food and beverage X having so-and-so at your house, priceless. right?
Yeah, I've seen that. Right.
And they do that, on every lot. And
That's a tagline for an ad. Na 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 na,
Right.
an amount of money. Na 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 na, priceless.
right,
Yeah.
MasterCard.
Oh, there you go.
And so with them, like, and we wind up starting the bidding at the value on all of those things, right? So the value is $3,500. Having Michael Chiarello come to your house, and he's not in that auction. It's just the name that's on the top of my head, and I don't want to spend a bunch of time trying to pull one out. Michael Chiarello come to your house, priceless. We'll start the bidding at $3,500, and then the crowd expects that, right? They see that, they understand that. Like, expectation management is the key of your catalog. And so maybe there's the argument that the value puts a ceiling on people's bidding, and I believe that.
I do too. And it doesn't mean that it's going to stop there being irrational philanthropy, but now you're relying on irrational philanthropy because they're going to note, hey, it's above what this thing is worth.
Yeah.
Kind of implying that I could go get it somewhere cheaper.
Right.
Now it's just all being generous, right? Yeah. And there is a value prop there. And if we can keep it a little bit nebulous, which is what priceless is worth, and God knows, right? I've had the sisters made this pie and it went for $2,500. Trust me, that has zero to do with pie, right? And so, going out on a limb, high return, high risk, right?
Yeah,
high reward, high risk.
Yeah, you hit the first takeaway because it's from you.
Oh, okay. Well, it's okay to be on a limb as long as you know that you're not going to fall too far if it breaks. I think Greg said that earlier, and it's a florid metaphor.
But it's the truth. I mean, like the crowd's perception, what we're doing on stage is theater, and it's emotion management, right? Like, the emotion of a crowd as a whole is a delicate thing. And if at any point in time the crowd starts to feel like, oh, this is a failure, trust me, it's not just one person feeling that, right? Like, that's rippling. When you start at 50 and don't get anybody, and then drop to 25 and don't get anybody, and then drop to 10 and don't get anybody.
We all know.
Like, the whole crowd is feeling that, right? And that's a long way to fall.
Yeah.
That's a long way to fall before you actually hit balance and start succeeding, right? And so it's okay to stretch, right? I think we traded lines because you said, like, a limb is a great opportunity to get unexpected money or to get high returns, but also it has a risk of failure.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're gonna run the risk of failure, make sure that you don't fail too hard. It's okay to fail.
Yep.
Right? It's okay to fail, and I address I say this almost every fund to need I do now. I say, I at the end of each level, I ask, does anybody else want to do $10,000? And inevitably, it gets really quiet.
Oh yeah, pin drop.
And I say,
did I miss anybody?
And I say, ooh, it got quiet, didn't it? And everybody, and a few people laugh, and I'm like, so whenever that happens, there's three things that happen. One, everybody gets quiet and people kind of snicker. Two, people laugh and they kind of snicker a little more. I said, and three, sometimes somebody feels it and makes a donation. And all of those are emotionally appropriate responses that I celebrate. And it's the truth, right? You know, like, here's a moment that we're all in. Let's enjoy it together.
Yeah. And when you're on a limb, and you are going through the motion of anybody else, did I miss anyone? And then you do catch something,
right?
I'll point that, last minute Louis, and I love it. Or look at that, they were moved by the Spirit, So there's risk and there's reward, and that's what makes it so delicious.
Yep. And in terms of one of the things that's really important, I think one of the big takeaways from this is set and manage your audience's expectations, right? Put your levels for your fund to need in the catalog. Even better than that, put your levels for your fund to need in the catalog and tell them what each level could possibly do. Make them feel moved, make them understand. We're going to 10,000, 5,000, all of these different levels, you're going to have opportunities to give. And
I do that. I do that too. As part of the ask, I say all the levels and all the way down to 100. And because that gives them a chance to, like, maybe set where they're going to give.
Yeah, sure. And then momentum brings them up.
Right. But if you could all push just a little, Maybe jump up one level from the first level you thought of when we just said those. We will harness the awesome power of collective giving. Wait, am I getting paid for this? Never mind. I'm not saying another word.
There's a great philanthropist in Sonoma named Dub Hay. He and his wife Lynn and Dub Hay. They do not want recognition ever publicly. But one of the things that Dub said, he was the sweetheart at last year's 2024 Boys and Girls Club of Sonoma Valley Sweetheart Gala, and he, in his acceptance speech, said, now all y'all came with a number in mind that you were going to donate tonight. Well, now I want you to double that.
Yep.
And I'm like,
yep.
I love you, Dub.
Yeah.
He's great.
You can come with me to all my events.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's it. I say thank you, watchers and listeners, for joining us for this episode of Black Tie and Tails, and for joining us on this journey. As always, we appreciate you. And as always, you can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, and all of your favorite podcast distribution channels. You can also find it at blacktieandtails.com. And as always,
smash that like button, like and subscribe. Now hit my music.